Welcome to the Dew Point Podcast. Today I am with Matt Beran, and Matt and I have known each other for somewhere between 10 and 12 years or so.
Yeah.
And we're in similar lines of work. So we run in parallel trails and cross paths fairly often. And as you folks who are listeners of the podcast know, I usually pull out some snippets from people's LinkedIn profiles. And so here's what Matt has to say. I'm a curious guy with a passion for good systems, informed design, and building things that matter. I guess that's why I'm all over the place. And trust me, Matt is all over the place, which is why we cross paths fairly frequently. Matt has 20 years of experience, 20 plus years of experience in service management and customer service, and that made him somewhat of an IT industry analyst. I have also been somewhat of an IT industry analyst. So I'm eager to advise, help, and there's no denying it. I love to discuss these topics at length. Hence, here we are. And we'll see how many episodes this winds up being. It may be one, it may be more. We'll find out as we get to discuss things. So, Matt, you're a product specialist with InvGate, and which is an IT service management product company based in Argentina, La Argentina, as we say in Spanish. And you also have a wonderful podcast called Ticket Volume, which is a double entendre, if we're allowed to speak French. And that is, ticket volume is the number of tickets that come into IT, but it's a nice play on words since there's audio, which has volume, and therefore Matt is a clever guy. It doesn't say that on LinkedIn. I'm saying that.
Glad you got that. I'm glad you picked that. You know what's funny is we came up with that name and I didn't even realize it was a double entendre at first. At the very beginning, I didn't even put the thought together that it was about volume.
It is indeed about both of those things, and it's a great name for a podcast.
Thank you.
Not as good as Dew Point, but there you go.
Heck yeah.
You don't have to explain it to people in the business. I have to explain mine every single time. So there you go. So it's good to see you. You are all over the place. I see you on various podcasts and posting on LinkedIn very frequently and writing articles and very much involved with what's called OSC.
Yeah, Open Service Community. Yeah.
Let's tell me more about that. I'm a little bit involved in that, but tell me more about that and how it got started and what it's all about.
Oh, great. I love this that we're opening with OSC. It's what happened is a couple of years ago, there was a huge framework that this framework of IT operations is kind of how a lot of companies all speak the same language. They all think about how IT operates together, and it was bought out. And that buyout kind of let the community know that, hey, your community is for sale. and there's nothing wrong with that in a capitalist society and in a world market economy. But there were lots of people in the community who didn't feel comfortable with that. And so we came together to just start something that was open and free and can't be purchased and isn't owned by a company. And the point is to grow service management professionals, whether they be just starting off in their career or, you know, trying to get a job at 55, which is very, very difficult to do. Or maybe they're reskilling. Maybe they were a nurse until they were 55 and now they want to get into IT. Crazy to do it, but yes, do it. And so it's this beautiful community of people that have come together. And what happens now is what our community has decided that they want is to regularly meet up. And that's kind of the beauty of this kind of community, is that people decide what they want and then they can make it. So now we have what we're calling a micro conference every week, basically, where as many service management professionals can get on and discuss a topic, do a round table, look for work, help each other with projects, that sort of thing.
And there's a lot of that type of thing going on in many industries now. And I think that it has to do with the fact that, first of all, there's a lot of folks who are looking for the next step. Uh, you know how it is. I it's been traditional to refer to climbing the corporate ladder.
Yes.
And when you're climbing a ladder, or more appropriately coming down from a ladder, sometimes your foot is going, "Where's the step? Where's the step? Where's the step?" And I think that that's the kind of situation that a lot of people find themselves in, and they're looking for other people who are in similar situations, and other people who might be approaching a dew point, which is that point at which you make a decision that it's time to make a move. And so, and you've done several dew points. One of which was to hitch your wagon to the star of a particular company. Another of which was to do the podcast. Another of which was to become part of this open service community. So tell me a little bit more about the decision-making process that you had in one or more of those steps, and what goes on in Matt Beran's mind. And I know that's opening a huge, I want to call it a can of worms, but I think we have similar minds in a lot of ways, and I know what goes on up here. So
Yeah, there's a lot going on up there. It, the chemical cocktail that I got served definitely has ADHD in it. So I love to explore. I really do. I love to explore ideas, and I like to look at things from alternate angles. So, it's why I'm so interested in disruption, in how communities approach society and people in general. And so I found myself jumping around, like, ever since the day I left college to today. Even it feels like I'm just following the wind, kind of. Where is innovation happening? Where are there things that I want to learn and sink my teeth into? And I've always been looking for that. And much to the chagrin of my employers, that's kind of a risk to have an employee that's always looking to learn and always looking to innovate. And so the companies that aren't going to continue to innovate and aren't always looking to learn aren't always going to be my employers. And I found a large amount of success and satisfaction in becoming a consultant, going from being a service desk leader to consulting for service desks it was so enriching. I got to see all these different flowers. Like, if I'm just a bee, I got to pollinate all kinds of different flowers, different colors, different flavors, different regions, different sizes. And it was, I think, the 10 or so years that I was doing that really, it taught me that there is a professional humility and transparency that you can provide as an expert to really change people's lives, to literally change people's lives through these simple interactions. We're working on incident and change and problem and knowledge and all these IT processes. But at the end of the day, how that knowledge manager thinks about knowledge writing and coming to work and contributing to work and contributing to knowledge, how they think about that, their attitude for that's changing people's lives. That it has that roll down effect that happens to everyone that they touch. And I think that's really, that's why I do this, is because I love seeing other people get amped up about what they're doing, whether it's geeky or nerdy or just run of the mill, whatever it is. Seeing people get excited about stuff and then helping them do it better that is my goal in life. That is my entire goal.
and that's a lovely bonus, isn't it? When you see somebody that takes an action that improves their life, maybe based on a conversation they had with you. And I don't know if I'm sure this has happened to you, but it happens to me periodically where I'll get a message through via LinkedIn or an email or whatever, and somebody will say, "I don't know if you remember this, but I remember when you said or we talked about something." and it really changed the way I look at blank. And that is exceedingly rewarding for me. And I would wager, yeah, same for you. Good. Okay. That's good. For those of you not watching YouTube, Matt just gave me the high sign.
Yeah.
So ITSM, as it is sometimes unfortunately called, is definitely at some turning points.
Mm-hmm.
One of which is that it's no longer restricted to IT, that IT's role in business has changed dramatically, I think, going from maybe a separate service provider to becoming much more enmeshed in how business works. And that's because businesses now are so dependent on technology for just about everything they do, for better or for worse. And do you see, and we've had some interplay about this because for those of you who don't know us, Matt's company did publish a book on enterprise service management not long ago, in which I was a little bit involved. And enterprise service management basically is expanding the idea of providing services across the organization, sometimes in ways that IT has been experienced with for a long period of time. And I've written a lot about that. But where do you see, if you see a direction at this point, where is ITSM going, especially in light of some of the recent technological changes such as AI and so forth? What's on Matt's brain?
Yeah. I think you hit it. You touched on some very important points. The first one I think is that we've been saying it for 50 years, IT, the business, as if they are two different things. And part of that is the way that IT came about, because it was new. Technology was new. Using technology was new. And certainly the pace of change has rapidly increased, especially now. And that's kind of what the only consistent thing that we've seen through that time is that the technological change continues to just get faster and faster and faster. And so service management, especially IT service management, has been focused on making that transition to new technology better, safer, faster, more productive, more easily to adapt to for employees. It's been trying to bridge this gap between technological change and the human emotions around that change. And it's been trying to bridge that gap for 30, 40, 50 years, something like that. And what we're seeing now is that the IT people have started to mature, and we've become better business people. We're starting to understand that revenue is king. We're starting to understand that profitability actually is really, like, of course you're going to prioritize profitability, and the business side of things has started to become very technical. As a result of it becoming part of our consumer lives, and as part of those that cycle happening. New technology comes out, people adapt, it happens in your personal lives, and now the business people are becoming more technical. And so I think those two transitions, IT people becoming more business-like and business people becoming more technical, has started to bring the departments closer together. I think it's started to make it so that IT feels more comfortable at the board meeting and on the C-level executive calls. I think we've started to realize that promoting based on technical merit isn't always a great idea. It works great at the supervisor, team lead, even the management level a little bit. But once you get into people management and into C-level executive roles, you really want a lot of cross-pollination. You want people that aren't in IT leading IT, because they can trust the IT people to work with the technology and do what we know best, and they can deal with the emotional aspects of it. They can deal with understanding the business aspects of it. So I think we needed time to evolve. It's such a young industry. It's only about 50 years or so old. Well, I'll go further. Let's say it's 100 years old. It's still the youngest industry in the world. And so I think that we just needed to mature a bit. And now I think what I'm seeing now is ITSM. It's seeking relevance. It's looking to stay important. How do we, because I believe that and I believe that a lot of people in the service management space also believe that there's a lot of value that we've developed over the last 5 decades or so, that if we just move on, that we will forget, that we will go back to, common sense and to the way things have always been, as opposed to philosophizing about work and thinking about the human-centered design aspects of how we work. I don't know if it'll become another science, maybe. I see the work that Rob and Sherry Vu are doing from Teal Unicorn, and it really is just like, how do we work better? They're not calling it service management. I think they're calling it like open management is what they're calling it. And I think that's really what we're trying to do here, is talk about work, work on the work. How do we make ourselves more productive? How do we make technological change better? And I don't care what we call it. We can call it ITSM. We can call it open management. We could call it the grapefruit of the day if we want to, but I love it. And I'm sticking here to continue to grow this industry.
And you touched on a whole bunch of stuff there, Matt, and a couple of things I'd like to tease out. When you said it doesn't matter what we call it, and there used to be these arguments back and forth. Are these people customers? Are they service consumers? Are they end users? What are they? They're whatever your organization decides they are, right? They're basically the people who are using the technologies that are provided to them and providing feedback and running into issues and seeking assistance, whatever it is that they're doing. And one thing that I've seen, I started to see it a while back actually, was that the people who are on that side of the equation, who are consuming those services and using that technology, started to become much more willing to say, I got an idea. Why don't we try it this way? Or I found this app that does this. Is there a way that we can incorporate that into what we do? And I think that it's important for us in the industry to be more accepting of that fact and let people contribute from all over. As you probably know, one of the things that I've tried to do is to absorb good thinking from other disciplines. Like I've talked many times about alarm fatigue in IT and its consequences. Well, that comes from medical stuff. That started in hospitals with nursing. So when you're looking for things, or maybe when you stumble over things, where are you finding them? And I know that you're looking around. So what is it that you're finding, and where are you looking?
Yes, I'm looking everywhere. From the paddleboard you rent at the lake, and the way that the staff at that beach unlocks the paddleboard, hands it to you, trains you in. I'm never not paying attention to service. I think a lot of us are never not paying attention to service. Karen's included. They're really paying attention. And I'm sorry if your name is Karen. That was triggering. I'm sorry. But really, it is everywhere. It's in how I feel. It's, this lemon ginger tea that I'm drinking, how does it make me feel? How does it make my voice sound? I'm always analyzing that stuff. And I think continual service improvement, that's what it is. I mean, this is continual service improvement, is just paying attention, listening to the clues, and then forming an opinion about that. And then once you form an opinion about that experience, you say, okay, what if we, how might we incorporate this into our processes, into our experiences? And you see these stories all the time. You see them on the news. Someone gets hired by a company. The company goes above and beyond to impress this person. Maybe they find, they're a Taylor Swift fan, and they send a poster. I don't know. Taylor Swift goes to their house to tell them they got the job or something. that one would be going too far. But that's the point. Say that again, right?
That's a good one. I'd sign up for that.
Yeah, me too. And I think the problem is that you hear these stories of delight, and then you think, well, my company needs to put this in place, and that just isn't the case. There are ways to draw in delight and to write in serendipity into processes without spending the entire bank, without spending $1 million on having Taylor Swift show up at every employee's house that week. I suppose her rates are actually higher than that now that I think about it. But but the idea is to be curious and to think like a hacker. Because that's what we're doing, basically, is we're always trying to hack this stuff. How do we do more with less? How do we get more so we can do more? And all of that curiosity and that desire is just written into me. I can't stop doing it. Like, even as a dad, I'm thinking about how can I communicate better? How can I do a better experience here? How do I fold my clothes faster? Because I hate folding clothes, man.
Especially since you do a substantial amount of travel, and it's important that it fits in the suitcase, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're all looking for packing cubes. And sometimes we find them, and when we do, it's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
When we find just the right thing that does it. And that's why we talk about appropriate technology that does what we want it to do, what we expect it to do, and it does it efficiently and effectively. And I think that an awful lot of the chatter that happens around the industry, and we've seen this especially over the last couple of years with AI. And I am a strong proponent of appropriate artificial intelligence. And we, first of all, acknowledging the fact that AI isn't intelligence in a lot of the ways we understand it. At this point, anyway, it's got a huge amount of road to go down before it gets there. But it is fast, and it can be very helpful. But I don't know how. I'm interested to see how you feel about it. But my heart kind of drops when I see AI created videos and commercials and that kind of thing. And I just think, what a waste of bandwidth. We could be doing things that actually affect people's lives here. And I know of one company that recently they were providing customer support 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. That was it. Business hours only.
Okay.
They decided that wasn't good enough. Actually, probably their customers had that decision already. They brought in some AI and were able to expand their coverage to 24/7 without hiring additional staff. Now, they didn't get rid of anybody, but they augmented the staff they had, probably changed some people's hours so they could be there when they were needed. But they were able to cover 24/7 because AI augmented that staff. That's the kind of thing that excites me. And that's the kind of things that I think are important. And tell me how you see the AI revolution in its current status, and where you think it's going, where do you think it should go, etc.
I love this. This is the question. This is what everyone's thinking about these days. This is the question everyone wants. And I think there's an element where you do the right thing as an organization. You should always do right by your people, I believe. And part of that means, yes, giving them safety, helping people understand that they're secure in their jobs is one of the nicest things that you can do as an organization. And I think if you're not doing it right now, you've missed the boat already. And so I think that's the first part. Approach your employees' emotions around AI. You should always be considering it. I heard a story about a huge bank, and they wanted to show off their new AI technology. Well, they did. They showed it off. It generated this crazy report that used to take 30 people 3 days, and it took it 16 seconds. But then, you look over at the group that used to do that report, and you can see it in their faces. They're pale, or they're just not looking happy. They're just not. This isn't a good situation for them. And so I think addressing emotions is the first thing that we need to do as organizations, as teams, as leaders. That's the first thing that we should be doing. And I think the thing that really excites me is the same thing that you said. It's like having a second set of hands in a lot of cases. It's like having a colleague that's always waiting for you to ask it a question, or always sitting there, like knowing some things about you, knowing some things about your work. And then maybe you can, get some answers out of it, brainstorm with it. I really do think that it's a game changer. And I know that a lot of people say that, but here's why I think it's different. If you think about our processes, they were designed assuming that there's a single thread pushing work through a process. But in reality, we don't have that reality anymore. Now we've got multi-threaded work happening. I'm working, and at the same time, this other machine is doing something alongside me at all times. And I see it in some of our features that we're starting to add to our software. So for instance, something that would happen often, especially in change and an incident and in request, is when is this going to happen? When will this be done? When will my incident be closed? When will my request be closed? When will my change be closed? And the reality is that we never had the bandwidth to accurately calculate that number, especially in the moment, especially in the context of the customer asking, how long is this request going to take you, Matt? I don't know is a lot of times the answer I would give, or I would give a worst case scenario. I would say you will have it by the end of day Wednesday. And Wednesday is 2 days out. So I'm giving myself 48 hours easy to get this into place. And now I've got this machine that's sitting beside me, watching me work all day long. They've seen me fulfill this request 32 times this week, and they know what work is on my plate, and they know how long that work is going to take me. And so having that agent alongside you, that extra AI technology, whatever it is that's beside you, it frees you up to give that sort of thing. Now I can tell you, hey, I think it's going to take me 6 hours to replace this, given my current workload, and that the AI is telling me this in the background because our software is just adding it on. And I see that sort of stuff as the way that we have to think differently in our industry going forward. Your processes need to be reimagined with this new technology because you've never had it before. It's just like adding an ITSM system, adding a ticketing system. Before, we didn't have a list of our assets, an accurate list of our assets that we could control and relate to our incidents. Well, now that we added this technology, we need to think about incident management and asset management and how they work together because we have it. So I think the same thing goes with AI. Time to rethink.
Absolutely time to rethink. And I think here's how I've tried to express it. Uh, I've said there's two kinds of hybrid work now. One of them is, okay, I'm working remotely, I'm working in the office, I'm working remotely, I'm working in the office. That's the usual use of hybrid work. The other hybrid is I'm working with partners that are AI. And a lot of contact center systems have agent assist, where I might not know the answer, or I may have forgotten where to find it. And this thing can be in my ear or on my screen saying, hey, It's over here. Here's a link. Here's what you do. Here's the next step. I detect that this customer is getting progressively upset. Therefore, you might want to try this. And boy, wouldn't it be nice if we had coaches sitting on our shoulders all the time? And that kind of thing, I think is extremely helpful. And so the hybrid human plus technology teams that are evolving is, I think, a direction that we're all going in.
Yeah.
So if there were a couple of things that you think would help people make better decisions going forward in terms of either their service design or their technology purchases or their career steps when they come up to their next dew point, what do you have some thoughts around what those might be?
Yeah. I think the big one around service design is to be transparent. When you're doing service design, when you're building these experiences, not only do you need to be transparent and share what you're doing broadly, widely, and regularly, but you need to get the customers involved, or you need to get your colleagues involved. If you're developing a system at work, say you're switching out something, I don't know, we'll say you're switching from Google productivity docs to Microsoft productivity docs. And if you're going through that transition and you don't already have your colleagues, your coworkers, and your teams on your team to making the decisions around that rollout, making the decisions around that technology, you are robbing them the privilege of being involved in their own future. You're robbing them of the autonomy that people require to feel successful at work and happy at work. And that autonomy, the ownership of your work is so important that I believe it's something we need to just always have in the front of our mind in IT, that this work is not ours. Or it is ours. Our work is to work on the work that is not ours, is to make that better. And so having people, keeping your customers involved, doing the user research, having the difficult conversations with your users, having the difficult conversations with your customers, inviting someone to call your baby ugly is really hard to do when you've got this cute baby here you've been working on for years. But then they come up and they say, its eyes are crossed. It's got pink skin. I don't, you need to be used to that, that feedback. You need to get good at receiving that feedback of feeling uncomfortable in the problem, because that discomfort is where change comes from. That's where learning is happening. That's where if you're out there looking for a job, trying to get hired, that discomfort is progress. That's how you're making change. If you're sending out enough resumes to feel uncomfortable, then you're probably sending the right number of resumes. And so I think that's really what I want to encourage people to do, is to feel comfortable in the discomfort, to find challenge in the discomfort, to find your calling in that discomfort, because that's really where I've had the most growth in my career, is when I have felt uncomfortable, when I've pushed myself to do something challenging, to take a risk, and to be okay with it being associated with my brand and my name for the rest of my life. And thankfully it's paid off. I haven't made too many mistakes. But when I have made mistakes, I just pivoted, because that really is that we think about mistakes as leading to failure, but all success is dependent on mistakes. When you're building the mountain towards success, the only thing you're stepping on is your errors along the way. You haven't reached the top yet with every step, ever, until that last step. So always be exploring, always be uncomfortable. Comfort is the enemy. That's what I say often to my team. Comfort is the enemy.
Comfort is the enemy. Let's not call the podcast episode that, but I'm sure that we'll find plenty of fertile ground. Matt, thank you a ton for coming on and having this conversation. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And we will cross paths numerous times, I'm sure, during the coming months. But safe journey and continued success to you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks so much.